Miriam, as I understand it, you're going to share a little bit about your past experience, but you're also going to share the message for 2014 from these beings. Welcome to Night Magic.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Robert and Rachel. It's nice to be here, another audience to share a little bit more of these extraordinary experiences that I'm having with many names that they go by: extraterrestrials, aliens, there's so many names that they have. But to give you a very brief overview, the listeners, of my experiences, in 1988, when I was a young 22-year-old back then, I had a one-on-one encounter with blonde-haired, blue-eyed extraterrestrials. This was a very powerful spiritual experience that it's taken me really all this time to understand and accept. And this was a situation where physically I was in a car with other adults and a child, and was taken over on the side of the road on a highway in Canada, and then left this car and walked on board a UFO. And so this is really where the story of my life begins, and in this transformative state for the last 25 years. And I have had contact with these beings since then. I also came to understand and remember past memories of seeing them when I was a child, which is also quite fascinating, because a lot of these experiences that I've had can be supported by other witnesses to the events that have happened in my life. So the communication that I've had with them has been interesting, and I'm hoping that that's where we'll be able to really delve into in the show tonight, to share more about how that happens, because I know, Robert, you and I got into a little bit of a discussion about that earlier on today, or yesterday, and then to talk about this message for 2014. So where would you like me to begin with that?
Well, I guess that's a good place to begin, huh?
Yeah. How have these communications brought you into yourself and, let's say, really valued member of society? How has it helped you love more and do more? And what do they really tell you to how to interact with the human race versus how you interact with them?
Beautiful question, Rachel. Beautiful question. Great way to start this off. Prior to the interaction in 1988, I was always a very caring person, always there supporting and standing up for the underdog, really looked at nature in a way that was very respectful. I loved nature. My spiritual self was very, very passionate about caring for our environment and humanity and life. But when I had the experience in interacting with the beings, there were very powerful messages that were given to me in respect to my relationship as an individual human being on the planet, and how it was like a teaching that they gave with an understanding of how humanity is really responsible for the care of this planet and for the care of each other. And this is very important because it literally shaped my life from that point forward to be even more compassionate and caring and more deeply sensitive to the issues that I see around me as far as our environment and how we interact with each other. It doesn't mean that I became a perfect being, and I like to always state that because I'm still having the human experience as well. But it did make it so that I completely understood that I was responsible for our future generations, And this has been the driving force in my life, mostly in the last 6 years, which is when I came out to the public and started sharing this profound story. And these conversations that we had when I was on board the craft completely changed me, to the point where my family, for example, was saying that I wasn't even the same person, that the friends that I had that were around me were saying that I actually looked different and I acted different and I spoke differently. So there was a very big effect that happened. Once I came out of that and was able to adjust just a little bit, to this profound knowledge that was given to me and shared with me, then it became a relationship of communication with these beings where they would speak to me telepathically. And, I'm the type of person where I question everything, and this is one of the messages that they gave to me, was always question everything. Don't ever take anything as being the truth or even a lie at face value. You have to really look and understand anything that you're looking at, because quite often things are not as they appear to be. So when I started communicating with them and hearing them talking to me, a lot of people thought I was schizophrenic. And I thought, well, no, it's very different. So there's ways that they come to me and give me these messages even today. Sometimes in meditations
So this first experience you had, Dustin here is asking, was it seems that you're describing a peaceful interaction where, we hear a lot of stories about people that have been abducted having weird medical experiments done to them, and they're really horrifying and traumatizing. But you're saying that this wasn't your experience. It was more a loving experience to get you more to be like an activist for the earth.
Absolutely. And actually, thank you for your words and being able to express what really took place. An activist for the world, yes. Understanding, though, that the whole experience was not free of that trauma. It was not free of that trauma, because after this experience, I was traumatized, because, your whole reality is completely and utterly changed. There's nothing from that point forward that I was ever able to look at in the same way again. So that's an automatic trauma right there. Let
me ask you a question. I hate to interrupt, but let me ask you this question. On the night that you were abducted the first time, 1988, or brought onto the craft, are there any reports of sightings of this craft by that were in the news or anything like that?
Interestingly enough, there was a woman only in the past year that contacted me, and she told me that she'd come across my story, and she told me that there had been rumors and talk all over in that area around that time about seeing a UFO. And I hadn't heard anything about it. It was definitely not on the mainstream news, so I maybe wouldn't have heard about some local newspaper that had a story in that local area. But yes, apparently there was.
Miriam, the obvious question is, why you? Not why not you. That's fine. But why you? There's 9 billion people on the planet. You're the one that they've called to be an activist. Why?
This is where I believe it gets really deep into the history of these beings. Okay, it's actually quite simple. If we look at the history of the planet as far as the evolution of human beings, scientists today have been able to trace our DNA back to, for example, the San people in South Africa. Most of the population of the world can be traced, their history can be traced through DNA. So, why me? Why individually me? What I can say is the beings told me a story. It's like saying they told me a story about the history of humanity and how when human beings were originally created, that they created 4 or 5 different DNA strands of human beings, main bloodlines, let's call them, and that through those bloodlines, they would then be monitoring those bloodlines, those DNA threads, and that is still happening today. So what happens is, and I knew this, it's very, again, we have to be very cautious about how we view all of this, because if that is the case, I am not saying in any way that they are God. No, that is not what the statement is. And I'm not going to say that they, for example, some people make all sorts of accusations when I bring that up. I'm giving the story that they told me and how I related it later to the actual science and history. So apparently they said that throughout history, every offspring that came from those different bloodlines, at some point they would just certain members of the family to then, quote, abduct or pick up and monitor the DNA and the functioning body itself. And the purpose of this gets very interesting, because the purpose is because humanity is meant to come into body, incarnate into body, this is what they said, to have the human experience of, let's say, for lack of better terms, to densen, to make it our physical bodies dense and our experience to be heavy, meaning that we can connect in certain ways to the rest of life, and so forth.
Okay,
but
Miriam,
we can't necessarily travel there.
I understand where you're going with this, but look at it. What you're saying is not so different than the divine right of kings, that they had a, quote, bloodline that was that had some special connection to God. Now, you're not claiming that kind of connection, but
No.
you're claiming a bloodline that has been selected or pre-selected at some point in time by these higher alien beings that now overlook our planet. Is that what you're saying?
I would say that, yes. But what I would also suggest is that everybody on the planet is connected to those same bloodlines. The only thing that makes it different is that I happen to be picked up out of the crowd.
Question of why they chose you and not the person down the block.
I believe that it has something to do with the fact that, okay, we all know that DNA and genetics plays into whether or not, for example, someone's going to get a particular kind of disease, breast cancer, anything,
Miriam,
right?
We're just hypothesizing now. You really don't know why, do you?
No, of course,
They
no.
didn't tell you.
I mean,
this is why you were selected.
They let me finish this, and then it will make it, I will be able to answer that with absolute clarity.
We've got 60 seconds. Miriam, hold it for after the break.
Yes.
Okay. This is fascinating.
Okay.
Rachel, this is fascinating. We're going to be back with Miriam. Yeah, this is great. We were talking about. First off, I want to give you a website address. It's bluestarprophecy.com. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, if people want to get in touch with you, I'm certain they can contact you through your website. There's all kinds of fascinating information on that website. Well, we have a couple questions from the chat room.
Yeah, you've mentioned that the aliens have talked to you. Now, is this a physical, verbal communication like you and I have right now, or is it more an ESP communication?
It's more of an ESP communication. No one, if I get a message from them, no one else is, that's standing beside me has been able to hear it. But to explain this, I'd like to share a little brief story about one thing to give some depth to this. I'm laying on the couch one day. All of a sudden I hear a voice. It sounds like someone talking to me. And they said, tomorrow I want you to contact Barbara. And I was like, what? What? And I kind of shook my head and I thought, where did I hear that from? And then I realized that it was them, so I paid attention. So what happened was they started saying to me, tomorrow it's very important you contact Barbara. And I was like, where is this coming from? Finally, I had to sit up on the couch and say, okay, I got the message. The very next day, just before I go to sleep, same message is coming in, and it's almost as clear as I'm hearing, the two of you in this conversation, but it's in my head. The very next day, this woman, Barbara, contacted me, and I had not heard or talked to her in 1 year. And when she did, she said to me, I felt as though we needed to talk today. Give me a call. So that's the kind of thing that happens with this communication, and why, for me, I've learned the difference between my own internal chatter, which is a voice in our heads, and them. It's a very specific experience in hearing that voice that I know is not my own. And no, they've never asked me to do anything to hurt or harm anyone. They've never, it's not like that. It's always about trying to give encouragement or give me an understanding of something more deeply, or to direct me to do certain things that will benefit the work of protecting humanity and protecting the planet.
Okay, so you feel empowered since 1988 to do this work. How have they empowered your life?
They have empowered my life by supporting the abilities that I've had for being intuitive, being able to understand on a deeper, constantly much deeper level, the interconnectedness of life, the interconnectedness between human to human and nature and the other dimensional worlds. Robert?
Yeah, I'm right
You were
here.
going to ask something?
No, I'm listening.
Oh.
Okay, so
they've empowered me to do that, but also one of the things that they've done is that they have in given me this encouragement to be able to be comfortable with being human, which means make mistakes, being compassionate, being loving, and being okay with the fact that I don't have to tear apart the planet in order to on the planet. That's something that they've given to me also.
Now, do you have this interaction, this ESP interaction with them? Would you say on a daily basis, a weekly basis, monthly? Like, how in depth is your interaction with them?
At times it's daily. It depends on what it is that's happening right now. For example, I just got some messages a couple of weeks ago. And in those messages, they told me about certain people that were going to be coming into my life. And it was just sort of a heads up, I call it. And it wasn't meant for me to do anything, but for me to just automatically, as soon as that person enters, I recognize, this is important. Pay attention to that person, maybe listen more closely, maybe be a little more patient with them, whatever the case may be. And then I continue to do the work that I do, which is advocating for respect and honor for all life.
How do they know who's coming into your life?
Okay. So this goes into part of the message for 2014 and what happened to us, or many of us, in 2013. They came to me and...
Yeah, okay. I want to know how they know who's coming into your life.
And if you allow me a moment to explain it, it will become very clear, Robert.
Okay.
Very, very, very clear. So in 2013, they came to me and told me that many relationships that people had built up around them, were destructive. They were not positive relationships, whether it was for themselves spiritually as individuals or for the earth or humanity, and that to be productive in positive energy in the ways that we live. So they said, we're going to shake things up. This isn't their words, it's mine. But they said, we're going to make it so that these relationships start to be severed if they're not working for you in a positive way to have a positive future. We're going to start shaking them up. I said, okay, that's fine. 2013 was very dark because a lot of relationships were shaken up. They said in 2014 that if we did the work of cleaning up our own personal environments with our relationships between anything, whether it was in a job or whether personal relationships, that we would then begin to see the fruit of that, of those new things. Now, what I know for fact, Robert, what I know for a fact, because I've experienced it over and over again, is how do I know when people are going to come into my life? Or how do they know? It's because they have influence over who meets who, when, how, and where. And this goes into the implication that they control us. Because, but that's not really the case. Because we still have.
That's more than an implication. Okay, if what you're saying is true, that they bring people together, that they're pulling the strings of the little puppets, then what you're also saying is that we don't have the free will that we like to believe as human beings we do have. Now, this also begs the question, is this just another need for a higher power? In other words, are these the angels of the past or that kind of thing? So I'm just wondering if they have this kind of power, if this is kind of your way of finding some authority in what you are channeling or what you're tapping into through your own mind.
Well,
I
would disagree saying, yeah. I would disagree on both those points, actually, completely. Because what happens is they're going to come and maybe say to someone, whether they realize it or not, go to the store and pick up some milk. And then because that person went to the store and picked up milk, you're going to run into someone. With me, I'm hyper aware of those things, and they might actually come, and maybe I am tapping in to say, oh, I'm at the store because I'm going to meet someone. Now, the thing is that I know for a fact also that we have free will, because once the relationship you can either follow that or you cannot. And I've seen that time and time again, where a message comes in from them, and if you're aware of all of those messages, then you realize, oh, I don't want to go down that thread, even though they asked me to do that, I don't want to, and then you walk away. And it's as simple as that. So I don't believe that they have that control to that degree. We do have free will. I have free will.
So if these beings can help dynamically arrange human interactions, can they also do that with nature? I mean, if they're talking to you about helping heal the planet and take care of nature, can these beings take care of nature themselves?
Yes, from what they have said to me, that they said that they do have a certain amount of control over nature, and that they do, but they don't have control fully over human beings. They don't fully have control over nature. They don't fully have control over anything, but they do have influence on it. And this is where it, looking at it from the perspective that I am as a person who's had contacts with them for so long, with all of the crazy stories that people have shared and some of the really negative experiences that people have shared, this subject matter is very complex. Angels or devils, reptilians or blonde Nordics, are they Hitler this or are they that? There's so many rabbit holes to go down. Is it ourselves or is it them? Are they controlling us? Do we have free will? It's a whole range of questions that everyone, including myself, I always say, we need to always be very cautious about making assumptions of anything. And I make I make a certain level of assumption, but only with myself because of my past experiences and my current experiences. They've empowered me. They've allowed me to see the world in a way that benefits me and benefits humanity. I mean, I understand that the powers that be out there are trying to take away our rights, for example. I understand that we need to be responsible in our environment. I know that I have the ability to tap into energies, and I can heal people, and there's lifting that has been going on in my life. Is that from them or is that me? Part of the reason, and I'm going to go back to this, Robert, because you didn't let me finish. Part of the reason that they chose me specifically, and I believe that they, quote, choose other people, is because of those DNA threads. And when they find individuals that have very specific gene markers in them that have come up through evolution, those are the people that are chosen. Because if someone was all of a sudden had no ability whatsoever to have any sensitivities into, quote, magic, okay, if they did it and they didn't have any magic whatsoever, and they were all of a sudden given the ability to see the thoughts of people and to hear the thoughts of an individual who's sitting in front of you, to tap into somebody else's dream time, to be able to heal people with their hands right, that would be very traumatizing, and they would probably blow their circuitry in their brain, causing them to go off to the deep end, which could be what happens to people when they have psychotic breaks.
So you think
And
the knowledge you gain in life helps the aliens pick who they use because you need some background?
In a simpler way of putting it, I'll agree to that, yeah. I mean, that's a good description. I think that we could talk a whole hour on it, but it's a good description of why, yes.
Can you contact them at will?
I send out messages to them at will. It doesn't mean that they communicate with me when I want them to, no. Quite often it's a process of trying to be able to clearly hear a message from them. And when I do, I try to be very quiet at night just before I'm going to sleep, or in a meditative state. But every once in a while they'll come to me like just out of the blue and start talking to me. But not normally do I have that automatic response from them, no.
Do you think that's due to kind of like a time zone difference?
That's a great question. I think that sometimes it has to do with Rachel, I love you. You're fantastic. I think that it does have something to do with it. And I also I know for me that it has something to do with me. Because sometimes I'll be like, why am I doing this? What's going on? Give me some answers, just everyone else in life. And I want an answer to something. It doesn't work like that. The answers and the guidance that I get has to do with my spiritual growth. It has to do with maybe giving me the encouragement that I need in order to, or maybe even that I want, in order to be in service, to work with people that are caring for the environment and working with humanity to awaken them in some way. So the interactions are not always personalized, and if they were personalized, then I don't think that they would be, I don't think they'd be talking to me. It's not because it's really not about me. It's about something bigger. It's about us as a collective.
Do we have something else from the chat room?
But
or did we?
Rachel, I would all.
Looks like we might have a caller on the line. Let's see if we can get him on here.
Okay.
Yes, we are taking calls.
We're taking calls, but we don't seem to have a caller on the line.
Oh, okay. We don't have a caller on the line. I thought we had another question in the chat room that we didn't. See, the aliens are now messing with our minds. It's part of that influence thing. And by the way, if they can control the environment or whatever, your cell phone has been kind of going in and out, and the engineer wrote that it could be that we're experiencing solar flares. So maybe you can get them to put those solar flares down a little bit. Anyway, call 1-800-653-1680. 1-800-653-1680 if you want to get a question into Miriam, and or 618-421-4522. Do we have another question from the chat room?
It does look like we just got another question in here from Jan. She asked, have you ever introduced a friend to your aliens, or are your interactions with them only in your head?
Again, Jan, thank you for asking. Love that question, because I have actually introduced quite a few people to them. And how I've done that is very specific. There have been a number of people who have met me in person. Usually they meet me in person, not always. And we have very deep discussions. And after they meet me or, have some kind of a big interaction with me, they'll say, I want to see them. And I'll tell them, okay, I'll let them know. And quite literally, after people have met me, they have had serious UFO encounters, not with the beings, but they have seen UFOs shortly thereafter meeting me. And it's undeniable that this is a, quote, UFO. It's not anything else. I mean, craft itself making its presence known to people. And it's happened over and over and over and over again. So yes, there have been people who have had sightings. There's people who have said, yeah, I want to see them, and then they haven't. So what's the difference there? I don't know. I can't answer that.
These UFO sightings are, and with your experience, are they the flying saucer type UFOs that we see in movies and TV all the time, or are they different? I mean, do the aliens really have the big heads and the big eyes? Like, what's your experience?
The ones that I have had contact with look rather human. Like they have massively huge, just huge blue eyes that are slightly slanted upward, but just a little bit, almost like cat eyes.
Wait a minute, are you talking about
massive?
Go ahead. I have blue eyes.
But the eyes, they have blue eyes. They have blondish type hair, which is very strange. It's kind of like, it's kind of wispy and all over the place. And they have very small noses and mouths. And they're very interesting looking. You would definitely know that they're not human, that's for sure. There's no way to make that error. But I've had interaction with more than one. And one time, which I know that your listeners will love to hear this, I had an interaction with one that are generally known as the Nordics, where I physically saw one when I was in Hopi, out in Arizona visiting the Hopi at that time. And blonde hair, blue eyes, Nordic, they're very buff, workout kind of beings, very strange. And they were just standing there. And the little girl that I was with saw them, and she said, yeah, that man looks really weird, but it was like she just ignored him. After that, I saw 3 more times these beings interact with me physically after I got back to Vancouver. The 4th time and the final time, I was in a vehicle, and this being came in. This is the strangest thing. I know this sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy. It's all craziness. I'm driving down the road in the back seat of my friend's car. Husband or wife are in the front, and this Jeep comes up with one of these beings that is clearly not human, clearly. And this being looks in the car at us and is not really driving. And I thought, oh, my God, there's another one. No one's ever going to believe me. That's it. I am absolutely insane. That's what I said. It was like, that's it. I'm insane.
Now,
then the little girl said, no. Then the little girl said, oh, my God, look at that man in the Jeep. He doesn't even look human. And then I went, oh, my God, I'm not insane. I'm totally sane. You see? So that's what happened.
So do you think your experience with the Hopi Indians helped make some sort of spiritual connection for you to be able to physically see these beings doing things like driving cars?
No. In fact, my interactions with the Hopi didn't come until, I think, 14 years after my experience in 1988. And they haven't strengthened my interaction with them. I think that my interaction with Hopi has, I believe that that's why I understand them the way that I do, is because of this deep connection to the earth and to humanity in a very unique way, because of some of the information that was shared to me by these beings. I think that I'm able to connect to Hopi in a deeper way because of my relationship. But to the beings, I have a very strong relationship, and I know that Hopi does not necessarily make that stronger. It just makes it more beautiful and intense, if that answers the question.
Let me ask you this question. What about, have you had any experience that you dare talk about with the Men in Black?
Oh my. Yeah, I had one experience with the Men in Black, and that was a game changer for me. I was very young. It was just after 1988. I think it was 89 or 90, maybe 91. I went to meet a researcher on the street in Vancouver. We were going to meet in front of the library. And I was there. He was bringing another gentleman for me to meet. And we were sitting together, and he said, "Oh, there's my friend. I'm going to go talk to him." And he was down the road, took a few steps away. And when he did, this, quote, man walked up to me, who I thought was a man, wearing all black, but he also had black eyes, black hair, black coat, everything, just like that. And I was just blown away by this, because to me, being as sensitive as I am, it was as if I was looking at a hologram. There was no energy with this person that was talking to me. And he spoke to me in somewhat gibberish. And then he walked away, and he came back, and then he said, "Do you know where," I can't remember, I have it in my notes from that time, and then I put it in my book, but he was talking to me about where some good shopping was, and I went back and I said to him, "You're in the shopping district." And I thought, what is going on? And then when this researcher and the other gentleman came back to me, they just said to me, "What the bleep, bleep, bleep is going on?" That was an MIB. And I said, "What's an MIB?" Because I didn't know. And then after that, I was also given a document at that time, which is why I was meeting with the researcher. Someone gave me a document that I was told not to show to anyone or talk to anyone about. And a lot of really high strangeness was happening to me during these few months. And I ended up leaving town. It was after I saw the MIB. I was given a document that said top secret on it, that was an MJ-12 document that was not blacked out, by the way. It was not blacked out. And it was on what would happen according to the government and what they would do with people who had had contact with extraterrestrial life and what they would do. And after the MIB, that was it for me. I was done. My boyfriend's place was broken into. It was just high strangeness, and I ended up leaving town. And I believe, looking back, that whatever that interaction was with that MIB caused me to just completely leave the entire incident of, just try and put this interaction with these beings behind me and try to run away from it, because it took me a long time, but it was right after I met him that everything changed again.
Do you believe...
And I became very fearful.
Do you believe, or do you know, whether the governments or government of Earth, i.e. the U.S. government, Canadian government, Soviet, where am I from? The Russian government, whatever, mm-hmm. Chinese government, do you believe that any of these have some kind of contact or connection with the aliens?
I personally have no proof of that, of course. I only have my own speculation. What I would, again, share with the listeners and yourselves is that when I was a young child, my father used to tell me the story about what he called the Russian psychic army. And then from that, I'm making this really brief because this is in my book, Blue Star, Fulfilling Prophecy, which I give away for free on my website, by the way. In that incident with these beings, shortly after this man approached me from out of absolutely nowhere, told me that he worked with the Russian government and that he wanted to bring me into a psychic program with 10,000. He said, we've been working with people like you for years. You'd be very comfortable. We have a whole community of people like yourself. You'd never feel alone again. And we can train you and do all these things. And I said, no, thank you very much, and don't ever ask me again. And so I know that there's something going on and that there's some connections. But what that is, I think that I would have to say I'd best leave that type of speculation to other people to try and get into details. But it would be ridiculous to believe or even think. It would not be rational to think or believe that they don't have anything to do with it. And here's something I state to people, because we only have a couple minutes left, which is a very important statement to make, which is, if this phenomenon is all in my head or in the heads of all of the people that are having experiences like this, then why, even still, why is it not being studied by scientists? Why is it not being looked at by governments? Why is there not a new pharma drug being made to make me forget everything? Why are they not pumping that out? And that's because, in my view, they don't want to even say that there's nothing going on, because there is something so big going on that they just have to stay away from it altogether. And that's my analogy on that.
Do you think more people would have alien experiences if they weren't their governments and men in black interacting with this? Would more people have these alien experiences?
That's a very good question, and something that I haven't thought about. But I think that may be a possibility. Yes, but I would say this. Not all of these beings are good. And that's the other thing. Just because you see a tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed extraterrestrial, and I've had good experience, does not mean that the next one standing in front of someone is going to be good. It's the same as human beings. That is what I share with everyone. Because I know people who have been absolutely, horrifically traumatized through terrible things through some of these beings. So again, is the reason that they're not sort of in here within the world every day because the governments are kind of keeping them at bay, and maybe that's a good thing for us, maybe that's a bad thing. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that.
So with these good and bad beings, is there this intergalactic kind of Star Wars thing going on that we're just not really aware of here on Earth?
I wouldn't, I can only speak from my own personal perspective, from my own personal interactions, knowledge base, and understanding of this. And I would say that there is definitely, within life itself, there is a struggle between good and bad, dark and light. There is that struggle. Whether we want to view it as an intergalactic, they're out there fighting physically, or whether we want to see it as something as an energetic, or to see it as another dimensional world, yes, there's a struggle going on. And we are not always aware of that. But it's the same as looking at any human being. This is my perspective. We can look at a human being as having a positive part and a negative part. I certainly have both. Are we going to focus all of our attention and say, no, they don't have that, just because that's what we see in front of us? Those two things are present, and they're present in everything.
Now, what are you doing every day? What's your day like in regards to helping empower people through your program and your website? Give me a little idea of what you're doing.
For the last few years, I've been working on, of course, Blue Star Fulfilling Prophecy. The book was written. I then tried to share it with as many people as possible, which is why right now it's for free. I do articles on bluestarprophecy.com, and also I've been working for the last couple of years very hard on working at starting up a nonprofit in the United States called The Great Gathering, and that's at thegreatgathering.org. And that's about really putting to use some of this knowledge that we are responsible for the earth through cultural programs, environmental projects, social exchange, and economic development. And I'm working very, very, very hard with people all over the world on that. I'm also beginning to make more connections with different indigenous groups around the world. For example, I believe it was in 2011 I went over to Africa and I met some of the Dogon people. I've also been to South Africa and met some of the Khoisan people, which are this very old DNA where a lot of the DNA of the planet can come from. This year I'm going to be traveling to Australia to meet with the Aborigines. And of course I have a very deep and beautiful relationship with the Hopi right here in the United States in Arizona. So my day is filled with trying to interact with as many people as possible and try to connect these different individuals who are working to create a better awareness of who we are and what we're doing, whether it's on a spiritual level or a physical level through eco-villages and eco-building and this type of thing. So
now we've got
a lot.
Miriam, we've got about 3 minutes left. What is if you want to encapsulate it into about 2 minutes, what do you think the message is for 2014 from these intergalactic beings?
The message for 2014 is for all of us to have this deeper recognition that our actions are going to produce the results that we're looking for. They are saying that whatever we put our energy and focus on this year is going to manifest. It's really going to be manifesting this year. And I've seen this over time. They're very, very accurate with the messages that they give. And some people may say this is a broad message, but it's actually not. Sit down, make a list of what you want, and start making plans and put it into progress for what you want to build. And whatever it is, you're going to be able to create it at the end of this pathway. But right now, anything you look at or think or do is going to manifest very, very quickly for us. On a planetary level, there's going to be so many truths that are going to come out. And one in particular, which is very strange, but they keep telling me this. I don't know why, because a lot of people know I don't care to do this, like make specifics, but there's going to be a very big spiritual or religious leader that's going to have some kind of disclosure. Now, it's either going to come about them or they're going to give us, the planet, some kind of disclosure, but it's going to happen this year, and that's something they keep saying over.
Hello, did we lose her?
No, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, you kind of broke up a little bit there. Go ahead, finish that thought.
Sorry. There's also going to be some more planetary changes that are going to be taking place, but I can say this. They're not going to be as severe as what a lot of people were thinking they were going to be. For example, they told me for all this time, from 1988 until 2010, they told me that in 2010 massive earthquakes would start. That's how long I knew that that was going to be the year they started, and they did. So what I'm happy to say is that this year there's not going to be as much damage as was originally going to be happening, meaning humanity itself has shifted consciousness enough to be able to put more of this balancing energy into the earth, which does affect us as a whole. So we're going to be moving a lot more positive directions this year.
Well, Miriam,
and personally,
thank you.
people are going to be a lot happier.
We're out of time, but thank you so much for being our special guest tonight. And we just barely scratched the surface, Rachel. We're going to have Miriam back again very, very soon. And
yeah, for anyone looking for more information, that's bluestarprophecy.com. Miriam, you can contact Miriam there.
Yeah, get a hold of her if you want to get involved in what she's doing or want to learn more, or she has her book there, and you can download that for free.